What if I told you that the difference between someone who stays broke forever and someone who actually builds wealth isn't about earning six figures or landing some dream job, but about hitting one specific number that completely rewires how money works in your life? We're talking about $50,000 in savings, a milestone that sounds random but represents the exact moment when your financial operating system gets a complete upgrade without you even realizing it's happening. And here's the part that'll make you want to check your savings account right now. Most people never hit this number because they're playing the money game with the wrong rulebook, grinding away while the finish line keeps moving further away. And I've spent way too much time figuring out why some people break free from financial mediocrity while others stay trapped in the same patterns for decades. If you want to understand what really happens when you cross the most underrated wealth threshold that nobody's talking about, make sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that like button if this video changes how you think about saving money. Here's what's wild about the $50,000 milestone that caught me completely off guard. Everyone obsesses over becoming a millionaire or hitting six figures, but they're completely missing the psychological shift that happens at 50 grand. It's like training for a marathon while ignoring the fact that mile 3 is where your body decides whether you're actually a runner or just someone who owns expensive shoes. The jump from having $10,000 to $50,000 isn't just adding zeros to your bank account. It's the moment money stops feeling like something you're constantly losing and starts feeling like something you're actually building. The first thing that changes at $50,000 is something so subtle that most people don't even notice it happening. Your brain stops treating every financial decision like a potential catastrophe. When you had $5,000 in savings, spending $500 on car repairs felt like a legitimate emergency that could derail your entire month. Your heart rate would spike, you'd stress about it for days, maybe put it on a credit card and hate yourself a little. But when you've got $50,000 sitting there, that same $500 repair becomes annoying rather than devastating. It's the difference between losing your only umbrella in a rainstorm and losing one umbrella when you've got a whole closet full of them. This psychological shift unlocks something that financial advisors never tell you about because it sounds too simple to be real. When you stop making decisions from a place of financial panic, you automatically start making better decisions. That sale item you would have impulse bought because it was 50% off suddenly doesn't seem necessary. That predatory payday loan you would have considered becomes obviously ridiculous. You develop what I call financial peripheral vision, where you can actually see the consequences of your choices instead of just reacting to immediate pressures like some sort of financially illiterate robot. But here's where things get genuinely interesting, and this is something that blew my mind when I first discovered it. At $50,000, your money starts generating enough returns that you can actually feel it working. Let's do some math that'll make this real. If you're earning 8% annually on $50,000, that's $4,000 a year in investment returns. Now $4,000 might not sound life-changing, but think about what that actually represents. That's $333 a month that your money is making while you're sleeping, scrolling through social media, or pretending to work during Zoom meetings. Your cash is suddenly earning more than some people make at part-time jobs, and it's doing it without complaining about the commute or asking for vacation days. This is where compound interest stops being this abstract concept that sounds good in personal finance books and becomes a force you can actually observe happening in real time. Before $50,000, compound interest was like that friend who promises to help you move but never shows up. Technically there, but not really making a difference you could feel. After $50,000, compound interest becomes your most reliable employee, clocking in every single day and generating income without needing coffee breaks or performance reviews. Here's something that nobody warned me about when I started studying wealth psychology, and it's both awesome and slightly terrifying. Hitting $50,000 fundamentally changes your relationship with risk in ways that separate people who build wealth from people who just accumulate savings. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every investment feels like gambling because you can't afford to lose. Should I put money in the stock market? What if it crashes and I need that cash for rent? But with $50,000 in the bank, you develop what researchers call risk tolerance. which is just a fancy way of saying you can finally think long-term instead of constantly putting out fires. This risk tolerance unlocks investment strategies that were literally impossible before. You can buy stocks when the market crashes, which is exactly when the real money gets made. You can hold through volatility without panic selling at the worst possible time. You can take calculated risks on growth investments that could multiply your wealth over the next decade. Essentially, you finally get access to the same psychological tools that wealthy people use, which is why they keep getting richer while everyone else wonders what the secret is. The career psychology completely transforms at this level too, and this might be the most valuable part of hitting 50 grand that nobody talks about. When you've got substantial savings, your entire relationship with your job fundamentally shifts. You're no longer working from a place of desperation where you'll tolerate anything because you need the paycheck. You're working from a place of strategy where you can actually make choices that benefit your long-term trajectory. This creates what I call professional leverage that's impossible to fake. You negotiate harder because you're not terrified of losing the offer. You take on challenging projects because failure won't destroy you financially. You speak up in meetings because getting fired isn't the end of the world anymore. This confidence creates this weird feedback loop where success breeds more success. When you're not operating from financial desperation, you make better career moves. You're more likely to switch jobs for better opportunities, invest in professional development, or even start that side business you've been dreaming about since you were stuck in traffic 3 years ago. But let's talk about something genuinely strange that happens at $50,000 that caught me completely off guard. Your social dynamics get weird in ways you never expected. Suddenly you're the responsible friend, which comes with assumptions and complications that nobody prepared you for. People start asking you for financial advice like you're some sort of money guru. Family members might expect you to loan them cash, because clearly you've got it figured out. The dating world becomes particularly interesting because you start caring way more about potential partners' financial habits than you ever did before. That person who can't manage their credit card debt stops being quirky and starts being a legitimate red flag. Not because you're judgmental, but because you finally understand how important money compatibility is for long-term relationships. When you've worked hard to build $50,000 in savings, the idea of merging finances with someone who treats money like monopoly cash becomes significantly less appealing. It's like finally getting your life together and realizing you need to surround yourself with people who aren't actively trying to set theirs on fire. Here's where the psychology gets really fascinating. At $50,000, you develop what I call strategic spending patterns that completely invert how you think about purchases. Instead of just buying things because you want them or avoiding purchases because they're expensive, you start making decisions based on return on investment. That gym membership becomes a health investment. That professional course becomes an income investment. That quality mattress becomes a sleep optimization investment. You're not becoming some calculating robot who only buys things that generate measurable returns. You're becoming intentional about money in ways that compound over time. The relationship with time itself transforms at this milestone in ways that sound almost philosophical but are actually practical. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're trapped in what psychologists call temporal myopia, where you can only see immediate needs because the future feels too uncertain to plan for. But $50,000 in savings creates temporal flexibility. Suddenly, you can make decisions based on long-term outcomes rather than immediate pressures. That boring job becomes a strategic stepping stone. That expensive certification becomes an obvious investment in future earning power. You can afford to be patient with things that take years to pay off because you're not constantly in survival mode. Here's something that absolutely blew my mind about the 50 grand milestone. You develop this ability to recognize other people who understand money, like some sort of financial sixth sense. It's not supernatural, but you can spot someone with substantial savings from across a room just by how they make decisions. They're not the ones agonizing over menu prices or calculating tips on their phone. They order what they want and move on with their lives because they've internalized that small purchases don't matter when you've got your foundation solid. This creates these weird moments where you'll be talking to someone and suddenly realize they're operating from the same psychological space you are. Maybe they casually mention maxing out their retirement contributions or talk about rebalancing their portfolio like it's no big deal. Suddenly, you're having conversations that would have sounded like a foreign language to your former broke self. It's like discovering there's been this whole parallel society of financially responsible adults operating right under your nose, and you finally have clearance to access it. The really wild part about $50,000 is that it represents the tipping point where saving stops feeling impossible and starts feeling inevitable. Before this point, every expense felt like it was destroying your progress. Car repair? There goes 3 months of savings. Medical bill? Back to square one. But after 50 grand, you've built enough momentum that setbacks become temporary rather than catastrophic. You can absorb a $2,000 emergency and still have $48,000, which psychologically feels like you're still winning rather than losing. This resilience is what separates people who build lasting wealth from people who keep starting over every time life happens. So if you're grinding toward $50,000 right now, understand that you're not just accumulating numbers in a bank account. You're building the psychological foundation that makes everything else possible. You're developing the risk tolerance, the time perspective, the professional leverage, and the financial confidence that wealthy people take for granted. The first 50 grand is the hardest money you'll ever save, but it's also the most important because it transforms you from someone who has money temporarily into someone who thinks like a person who builds wealth permanently. And that psychological shift is worth more than any investment return you'll ever see.